Unit 3, Politics, Representative Democracy. We discussed democracy the other day as a form of government, and that form of government in the purest form of self-government, pure democracy, does not exist. It's very rare. Pure democracy hasn't really existed during the entire history of mankind. We've had to make modifications about our definition, about our expectations for democracy, and representative democracy is one of those modifications for logistics to make things work. Before we get to that, how about a little thought experiment? I hate politics. Students and teenagers, I hate politics. It's always arguing over government. Okay, well, what is the definition of politics? Activities associated with governments, achieving power. Hey, you hate politics. I get it. Arguing over who is in control. What's the definition of democracy? System of government, control of an organization by a group. What's the difference between politics and democracy? They're basically the same thing. It's a crunch and a crackle. They're the same. It's just a different brand. So do you hate democracy? Do you hate America? It's just one of those things you have to deal with. We discussed the other day democracy not possible when groups get bigger because it's impossible to get unanimous decisions. And remember, if a decision is not unanimous, those that are left out are not governing, they are being governed. And so that person is not self-governing. Thus, it's not self-government. Thus, it's not democracy. So we've had to make changes, throw the asterisk up, and change what our expectation or definition of democracy is. Direct democracy is one of the first examples of modifying what democracy means, modifying what self-government means. So we add new rules. That rule is majority rule. The most votes win. The many win. The mob wins. And so the group with more people makes the decisions, and the group in the minority has to listen to those decisions, 51-49. And the 49 thus are not ruling. Thus, it's not self-government. Thus, it's not pure democracy. But under the expectation of rule of direct democracy, it still counts. You got to make decisions. We can't have a unanimous decision. It's almost impossible to get all 100 people to agree. The time that it would take, crazy. So we make new rules. They are for logistical purposes. Careful organization of a complicated activity ensures success and effectiveness. We have to make modifications to make it work. We're going to talk about another mod today. You, the people, got to work, pay the bills, support your family. You don't have time all day to go vote on every single issue. You don't have the means to travel to Washington, D.C. or wherever it is to gather every day, pass some sort of new law to enforce that law. So what we've done with our democracy is find a way that you can still have some say, some influence on what happens without actually having to do it all while also working every day. That's going to be representative democracy. Rather than you vote every day, what you're going to do is you're going to vote for a person that will do that for the living. You can go get in the mine, and they'll go spend their time reviewing policy, passing new policy, enforcing new policy. This is a representative democracy. It is a republic. It is a modification of a pure democracy. It's a modification of self-government. You're not necessarily ruling anymore. The person ruling is the representative. You select someone to rule for you. The logistical situation to make things work. In our government, you vote for the legislative and executive branch. We'll focus on the legislative branch, which makes the laws that will later be turned into policy. Our legislative branch, or Congress, is divided into two houses. We call this a bicameral legislature, meaning two houses. We'll focus on the first house, the big house, the 6-year house, the Senate, 100 members in the Senate. Every state gets 2 senators. You, every 2 years, will elect a senator who will then spend the next 6 years sitting in that one house of Congress, voting on issues for you, representing you. The other house, the House of Representatives, has 435 members. This number is different amongst the different states. The amount of representatives a state receives depends on the population of the state. For every 700,000 people, give or take, your state is awarded a representative that will represent a geographic district. There's your 435 members represented as dots. You get to pick one dot every 2 years, and that dot goes and votes for you. There are your geographic regions. Again, 700,000 people, and then you map it out geographically, and each red dot represents that geographic district and votes for the 700,000 people living in that geographic shape for 2 years, and then you vote again. We'll look at ours. So here is our congressional district. You vote for the red dot, that or blue dot, but in our case, in Ohio, in our district, it is a red dot. My apologies to the blue dot people, but the example that we're using, we're picking a red dot. So you vote for legislators to make laws for us in the House of Representatives and the Senate. You also vote for the head of the executive branch, the branch whose task is to then carry out those laws, bring those laws to life, make the words on the page appear in your factories, appear in your stores, appear in your homes, appear on your streets, provide the resources, the funding, the people to make sure that the law is being carried out, that the law is being followed, that the law is being lived. This past election cycle, we had the job of selecting either Donald Trump or Kamala Harris. Donald Trump was selected based on his policy, his plan for how to use the executive branch. You voted, he won, and so his win, his vision, hopefully reflects your vision, and the people that are carrying out the policies of the executive branch day to day will follow through on what he wanted, which was what you wanted. Here is our map of the U.S. government. Blue, legislative branch. Red, executive branch. Yellow, judicial branch. We'll get into that later this year. No judicial branch today. The legislative branch passes laws. They write the laws up, but those are simply just words on the page. Let's say they write words on the page that says, families that earn under a certain amount of money will receive a free lunch. It is a law. It's on the page. Boom. Government has to do it now. Now it is up to the executive branch to make sure that families that earn under a certain level of income receive that free lunch every single day. They have to bring that law to life every single day. And the department that will be tasked with that is the Department of Education. And each department has a fun logo. Cool, awesome. And there are people within, thousands and thousands of people within that department, none of them which are elected, that carry out the job of bringing those words on a page to life every single day. And there are many of people that aren't just wearing suits, that are connected and have to work with the Department of Education every single day. The farmers that provide you with the milk, with the vegetables, with the fruit. There are transportation issues that have to be resolved. How do we get the food from the farm to the factory, and then from the factory to each and every school across the nation? And so those people work for and with the Department of Education. You voted for the guy that's the boss of all this, the boss of the employees in the offices at the DOE, the boss that has to work with the farmers and negotiate pricing of the milk and of the vegetables, the pricing of negotiating contracts with who's going to distribute the food from here to there. There's going to be nutritionists that have to be hired and managed and make decisions about what should be served every day, what is healthy every day. And then even all the way down to the lady slopping the sloppy joes on your plate. Made them extra sloppy for you. That person also technically works for the president and follows the president's policy and desires. If the president says, make those sloppy joes extra sloppy, because you, the voter, said, I want our sloppy joes to be extra sloppy, then thus, there it is, your democracy, your representative democracy, your republic. Now, there's no guarantee that happens, because it's not a pure, direct democracy where you get to make the decisions and you are hands-on and say, I don't like sloppy joes. You elect a representative and they do their best to represent you, whether the joes are sloppy or not. That's how it works. You vote for the boss of the executive branch who juggles all of these different departments and hopes that he is able to manage with his team all the different parts of this giant blob, this apparatus, and all the apparatchik that have to carry out the many thousands of processes the government is required to do every day, because there's many thousands of laws that have been written that have to be enforced every single day. And you have selected Donald Trump to be the boss of this task. Let's zoom in on the executive branch and talk further about all the different departments. We're going to go over all of those. No, we're not going to go over all of them. Let's just give some examples of what your vote in representative democracy entails. You voted for the boss is in control of all of this, carrying out the laws, enforcing the policy. For example, the Department of Labor, which includes everyone's favorite OSHA. So the law is written on the page about the regulation of your workforce, the regulation of the marketplace, the regulation for consumers buying goods. OSHA, the Bureau of Labor and Statistics, they're out there working, deciding what kind of regulations should be implemented, how to enforce them, who gets some fines, where we're going to stick that poster to the wall that says everyone has to do this, or here's where you get workers' comp, or you walk in and right there in the workroom in every single fast food restaurant that you go in, there's a thing explaining the minimum wage laws. It's got to be posted, and if the government guy comes in and doesn't see it, he's going to fine somebody. And they try to balance. You voted for your president. And it seems like the current president's executive branch is going to go more towards that money and less towards regulation. Trade-offs. Department of Transportation obviously deals with transportation. So do you want a government that's going to spend a lot of money on roads or not and spend elsewhere? Or maybe they don't spend on roads, but they spend on bridges. Maybe they spend on railroads. Maybe they're going to dig a tunnel from LA to San Francisco. Maybe they'll create warp speed hyperloop transit systems. Maybe they'll build an express railway, a bullet train. It is up to the executive branch to make that decision. You vote for the guy that's going to actually build those things. We got the DHS, Department of Homeland Security, FBI, ATF, DEA. The president that you voted for is going to be in charge of how hardcore these guys are going to be, who they're going to go after, which criminals they will prosecute, what kind of crimes they are going to make a priority, and what kind of crimes they may dismiss. Who are they investigating? What are the issues that they are most worried about, be it terrorism or other types of inner city possibly crime or drug crime? You name it. Maybe this government wants to crack down on speeders. Let's get some more let's get some more patrolmen out there getting speeders. I think that might be more of a state government issue. We also have FEMA in there. How do you want FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Administration, how do you want them to respond to natural disasters? Do you want to fund them? Do you not want to fund them? Do they respond to every single issue? Do they prioritize hurricanes over tornadoes? What is their duty? You vote for the guy that's going to ultimately make that decision. Recently, we had the Biden-Harris administration and in control of FEMA. And in a hurricane that affected western North Carolina, one of the main department heads for FEMA instructed their FEMA employees to ignore homes that had Trump signs posted. So if you were one of those unfortunate souls that had a Trump yard sign and were suffering during the hurricane, you no longer had a home, but you had a Trump yard sign or some Trump paraphernalia, you needed water, you needed to feed your kids. Well, unfortunately, FEMA skipped your house and went on down to the next. And this has been released and has been verified by actual FEMA. Not good. Maybe a possible reason why we elected a new person to be in control of the executive branch and new people to be in control of FEMA so that we help every American. We also have the Department of Defense. This is a biggie. Now, technically, for an act of war, you need Congress, the legislative branch, to declare it. But the reality is, most of our conflicts, most of our incursions with other nations are executive orders. The government, our Department of Defense, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, they're under the control of the president. And so when you vote for president, you are speaking and electing the person that's going to make about most of the decisions when it comes to, should we send soldiers to country A? Should we pull soldiers out of country A? Should we put tanks in country B? Do we need to buy missiles from this company? Should we buy fewer missiles from this company? All of those defense issues ultimately come back to the man that you're elected. Now, you don't directly get to decide whether we are in Iraq or not, or the Ukraine or not, or Israel or not. You do not directly get to decide the date that we pull all of our troops out of Afghanistan. You do not directly get to decide, do we pull the troops out first or do we pull the troops out last of Afghanistan? That is up to the man that you elect. It was Biden. He made the decision on how the process would be to get out of Afghanistan, to which many people were disappointed and many lives were lost, not helping the election efforts of Kamala Harris one bit. So the Americans picked someone new in charge of the Department of Defense. That's it. That's representative democracy. It's not a direct democracy, but it's a logistical issue. You can't go to DC, so we elect someone to do it for you.